Psykiatriker insisterar på att screening för psykisk sjukdom skulle vara till nytta för var och en. Men är det sant? Och vilka risker ingår? År 2003 lanserade en av presidentens rådgivande kommittéer kallad The New Freedom Commission on Mental Health ett omfattande projekt där strategin var att screena stora delar av det amerikanska samhället för tecken på psykisk sjukdom. Några av målsättningarna inbegrep att vidta åtgärder för tidig upptäckt av psykisk sjukdom, att utvidga skolornas roll i att diagnostisera och behandla psykiska svårigheter och att utöka användningen av screening för psykiska störningar, från psykiatrikens soffa till allmänpraktiserande läkares mottagningar.
It's going to screen the population for mental health. The whole population. They're going to do it by stages, starting with school children, of course.
Än så länge har obligatorisk screening för psykisk sjukdom inte blivit verklighet, förutom i några få små samhällsgrupper. En av dessa består av de mest utsatta och de med minst rättigheter. Fosterbarn.
A child goes into foster care, they label the child with some kind of a psychological problem. The child is immediately sent to therapy. Well, the therapist will say, well, I believe the child needs to be on something. So they recommend that the child see a psychiatrist to have the drug administered.
Out of the 60, 65 families that I see, easily 90% of the kids they have the mental health diagnosis to begin with. If they get it from a psychiatrist, it almost always comes with meds. And I think that we see identified as at-risk kids in the community, and we see some of the most intense situations. And a lot of them are on 4 or 5 different meds.
I've seen children that when the day they're taken out of their parents' custody and placed into state custody actually seem happy, healthy, vibrant, energetic. And then, 2 months later, after they've begun taking these medications, they're very slow. They are zombie-like, is the best way to describe it.
Idag får alla barn som överlämnas till fostervård i Texas screening för psykiska sjukdomar. Resultatet blir att 60% av delstatens fosterbarn diagnostiseras och förskrivs psykofarmaka, inklusive barn så unga som 3 år. Och det är värre i andra delstater. I till exempel Massachusetts behandlas 2/3 av barnen i socialtjänstens vård för psykisk sjukdom. Nationellt sett förskrivs fosterbarn 3 gånger så mycket psykofarmaka som andra barn. Så var det med det 7-åriga fosterbarnet Gabriel Myers som tog 2 kraftiga psykiatriska preparat, ett med en FDA-varning om att orsaka självmordstankar hos barn, då han hängde sig med en duschslang. Ännu en målgrupp är soldater i aktiv tjänst. Dessa screenas regelbundet vid militärkliniker och betecknas som lidande av en psykisk störning och får sedan kraftigt verkande och potentiellt våldsframkallande medel.
Iraq wasn't like Vietnam. There weren't illegal drugs everywhere. But there were drugs everywhere because every guy on post, they knew all they needed to do was go down and see the combat stress unit, the shrink, and he was the drug dealer on post for us.
Almost everybody that saw the body or experienced the event were put on some sort of psychotropic medication.
Some bases where my friends were at, my fellow veterans were at, everyone, the whole platoon was on drugs.
I would say about 75% of active duty military is addicted to some type of psychotropic drug.
You can walk around a military barracks and you ask someone for some Prozac, and somebody got some Prozac or some Xanax or some Zoloft.
I've got friends who were in the Army with me who are now dependent on Zoloft and psychotropic drugs just because they got used to it in Iraq and they didn't ever want to get off it, and now they're dependent on it and addicted to it.
We have huge numbers of military people on antidepressants, and instead of the suicide rate going down, which you'd expect if the drugs were effective, the suicide rate is going up.
This last January, we had more soldiers commit suicide than we had die in combat. And what's not being brought out much yet is the fact that the large majority of these soldiers were on these drugs. We're drugging the military at a rate we've never, ever seen before.
Och det är bara början. Screeningprojekt för psykisk sjukdom inom militären har planerats för 43 kliniker på 15 baser i USA, Tyskland och Italien. Studier visar på att så mycket som 12% av de som tjänstgör i Irak och 17% av dem i Afghanistan tar antidepressiva eller sömnmedel. Sammanlagt blir det 20 000 inom militären. Men dessa siffror bleknar inför det antal kvinnor som före eller efter förlossningen skulle kunna ges psykiatriska droger om lagar om obligatorisk psykiatrisk screening av dem blir godkända.
And when a woman is pregnant, right during the pregnancy, specifically right afterwards, her hormones are changing and sometimes raging. And to screen them and call it mental illness if they have any type of emotional issues in any way, shape or form is utterly ludicrous.
Även utan lagar som påbjuder det kan blivande mödrar screenas för psykiska sjukdomar utan att de vet om det. Här har vi några kvinnor som intervjuas efter läkarundersökning.
Have you ever been screened for mental illness?
I have not been screened for mental illness.
No, I've never been screened for any mental illness.
I don't remember any pre-screening.
I have not been.
No.
No? Have you ever been screened for any mental illness?
No, I have not been screened for any mental illness.
Did your OB/GYN or gynecologist have you fill out a questionnaire that contains psychological questions?
Yes, my OB/GYN did give me a questionnaire that has psychological questions.
I've never been screened for mental illness. Yes, I would say the first time I went to see my OB/GYN, I did fill out questionnaires about even family medical history, my mental state.
I've not been screened for any mental illness or depression. I took a questionnaire in my 6-week checkup, and it basically asked me about if I was crying, if I felt depressed.
Yeah, it was a questionnaire about depression. If you're depressed, or if you had any history of depression.
Are you happy with your normal day? Are you happy about being pregnant?
Have you ever hurt yourself? Are you happy? If I feel like hurting someone, if I was angry.
Do mental illness run in your family?
You know, it was very noticeable to me after the pregnancy that they're actually fishing for the postpartum depression.
When I was pregnant with my daughter, before I had her, I had to take postpartum depression medicine from my 7th month on to my 9th month.
Och vart leder denna screening? Till verksamheter som en inte alltför känd neddrogningsplan som ursprungligen formulerades i Texas 1995 och kallas Texas Medication Algorithm Project, eller TMAP.
TMAP is a program that was originated starting in the 90s, a collaborative group of doctors from University of Texas and the Texas Department of Mental Health and Mental Retardation. And what it was supposed to do was come up with the best practice for treating mental illness.
Med forskningspengar från 11 olika läkemedelsföretag skapade denna panel, som dominerades av psykiatriker, ett bestämt flödesschema som anger att man enbart ska skriva ut de senaste och dyraste psykiatriska preparaten till patienter med psykiska problem. Och om ett slags psykofarmaka inte fungerade var läkarna tvungna att försöka med ett annat dyrt preparat. Och om inga preparat fungerade var nästa steg elchocksbehandling. Men personerna bakom TMAP dolde en stor intressekonflikt.
They didn't disclose that the researchers that were all involved in creating this, almost every single one of them had financial relationships with the pharmaceutical companies.
Men Texas är inte den enda delstaten som har problem med korruption. Alan Jones arbetade i Pennsylvanias generalinspektion som utredare.
I learned that these monies were all coming in to the state to support and to promote a program called TMAP, the Texas Medication Algorithm Project. And so my concern was piqued very quickly that there was at least one state official who might be inappropriately receiving and dispersing monies from drug companies. They called it PenMap, but it was based entirely on the TMAP model. Also very quickly, I learned that there were other state employees who were serving on advisory boards financed through various pharmaceutical companies, and other state employees who were accepting honorariums personally, directly, from drug companies for speaking in their state capacities or official capacities. That's a felony in Pennsylvania. I saw there was a much bigger picture and attempted to surface that bigger picture, and was consistently told to back off. I was told that drug companies write checks to politicians on both sides of the aisle. back off. You will not expand this investigation into the drug companies. Continue to press the investigation, much of it on my own time at this point. I became increasingly alarmed that all of the drugs recommended by the TMAP program were exclusively the new patented atypical antipsychotics for schizophrenia and all of the brand new patented SSRI antidepressants. None of it added up. When it became obvious to me that my investigation was not going to be permitted to continue, and it became obvious to the Inspector General's office that I was not going to stop, I was removed from lead investigator on the case. They threatened me with loss of career, with loss of job, with loss of reputation, essentially.
Trots att utredningen resulterade i att Pennsylvanias huvudfarmaceut dömdes, spred sig TMAP och utlöpare som PenMap genom landet och inbringade flera miljarder dollar i läkemedelsförsäljning. Men psykiatrins lätta pengar går hårt åt allmänheten. TMAP och barnversionen CMAP gjorde år 2001 att Texas sjukförsäkringssystem och delstatens mental- och kriminalvård drevs till ruinens brant. Så vad blir slutresultatet? Ett screeningprojekt som drivs av staten och finansieras med skattemedel som ger ut kraftig, farlig och dyr psykofarmaka till varje person som av psykiatrikerna bedöms vara psykiskt störd. Och skulle inte det fungera ger man elchocker.
They're going to start with school children on the new Freedom Initiative. Then they're going to move it to senior citizen nursing homes. Then they're going to move it to, of course, military. And then parents.
By the time you're 18, you've been screened in utero when you were an infant. You were screened as an infant when you first came out. You were screened in your daycare. You were screened then at school. You were screened at the pediatrician's office. You're screened in high school. You're screened over and over again.
And to sit there and pass laws requiring that people be screened and drugged based on screening under state law or federal law is really, it's criminal. It should not be done.
They're marketing this madness all over this country, and we are actually becoming an example for the rest of the world. So we're, again, the poster child, if you will. And so the rest of the world is spending more and more on drugs.
I don't know that there was ever a time in the history of the world where people have been drugged to the extent of what we're seeing today.
The reality is, if you look at the overall picture, I don't see these drugs helping us make a better society. We see it in the military, we see it in our children, we see it in the schools. These drugs are not working to make a better society.
Och med de fördolda marknadsföringskampanjerna för psykiska sjukdomar i full gång, vad händer med patienterna när de väl fått sin diagnos och placerats på psykofarmakans löpande band?